In this video, we will be exploring what if Téa had shadow magic, a millennium item, a dual monster spirit, and much more. So if you're a fan of Téa Gardner, or you don't want to be hit by Truxan, make sure to like and subscribe, because we're trying to get to 20k subscribers in the next
6 minutes and 27 seconds.
That's right, so by the time you finish this video, we will have hit our goal, or else. Let's start with which millennium item Téa would have between the millennium puzzle, ring, eye, necklace, key, scales and rod. Now this is actually pretty tough and I was stumped for a little while because none of them really seem like they suit her, but at the same time a few of their qualities do represent Téa. For example, the millennium scale, which allows the user to judge and weigh the user's heart. Now I feel like this is in line with Téa Gardner, as she has a strong sense of morality. However, aesthetically, I can't really see Téa with this item. On the other hand, the obvious choice is the millennium necklace. This item fits aesthetically, however the powers of seeing into the future doesn't really align with Téa or her personality in my opinion. The conclusion I ended up with was the millennium ring.
What?
Now I know it seems a little odd, but hear me out. Téa Gardner is extremely strong-willed and has proven so on many occasions. For example, in season 0, Téa takes on her entire school in order to change the rules, allowing students to get part-time jobs. She endures getting ignored, bullied, and harsh criticism from her peers and teachers, and still comes through with a smile on her face. But my point is, I believe she is strong enough to contain the evil inside of the Millennium Ring, or temporarily keep it at bay.
You are made of stupid.
Now, I'm aware this is kind of a wild take. A high school girl able to keep essentially the greatest evil the world's ever seen at bay. Well, it's actually been done before by this guy, Mahad. Mahad was the greatest sorcerer to ever live. And when Mahad was chosen to be the wielder of the ring, he could immediately sense the great evil within and used a big chunk of his powers to seal away the darkness. But as I said, Mahad is a powerful sorcerer and Téa isn't. Well, that's where you'd be wrong. I believe Téa to be the reincarnation of Mana, who was the apprentice to Mahad and had the ability to summon the Dark Magician Girl. Now second to the Dark Magician in magical prowess was the Dark Magician Girl. Now factoring in Téa had those latent abilities inside of her, it's more than reasonable that she would also have the strength to keep the evil from the Millennium Ring at bay. Now even in the anime, it hints at a strong connection between Téa and the Dark Magician Girl. In episode 102, it shows her cosplaying the Dark Magician Girl and then she proceeds to choose it as her deckmaster. In episode 12, Téa reveals her favourite card to be the Magician of Fate, which shows an early interest in sorcery and could represent her level at that time, which is still very far off from the Dark Magician Girl. Now the reason I settled on the Millennium Ring as Téa's item is because I do kind of like the constant battle which will ensue from the spirit constantly trying to take control of Téa and Téa having to fight him off in order to gain control of her own body. I think this would be an interesting storyline. Téa would also feel responsible for the actions caused by the spirit, which would only fuel her resistance. With also Téa's strong belief in herself and her friends, she wouldn't go down without a fight. We've seen in the past Pegasus' Millennium Eye being blocked by the power of friendship. So in a similar circumstance, Téa can use that same power to block the evil spirit of the ring. However, I do want to hear what you guys think. If you think a different Millennium item would suit Téa, let me know in the comments down below, or you will be hit by. Now when it comes to Téa using shadow magic, she won't use it in a cruel way, and instead use it for the betterment of the individual she's facing. For example, instead of the mind crush used by a Tem, it'll probably be something along the lines of heart trap or heart lock. This in essence is shadow magic which traps the user in an endless loop in their own mind. Very similar to the Izanami Itachi used on Kabuto from Naruto. In essence, the heart trap would replay the wrongdoing the person did onto themselves repeatedly until they are overcome with sympathy or understanding on how this would make the person feel, and they would only be released from the shadow game once they have the intention to repent and never do the same crime ever again. For example, if the criminal robbed a store at gunpoint, in Téa's shadow game, they would have the same incident being replayed in their heads over and over again. However, the big difference would be the person being held at gunpoint would be the criminal's mother or loved one. This, I believe, would be Téa's signature move when confronting bad guys. Now, with her abilities and with the possession of the Millennium Ring, Téa would no longer be able to take a back seat in the anime. She would need to duel in order to protect her friends and herself. So the question is, what deck would she use? Well, I think before she attained the Millennium item, it would be a mixture of random cards, mostly containing spellcasters, as well as cards referencing friendship. For example, this card, Shining Friendship. Her deck would be mostly full of light and dark attribute monsters, with her boss monster being the Dark Magician Girl, a card she probably received from her friend Yugioh as a gift. However, once I think she embraces the shadow magic, I think Téa would receive a deck upgrade. Her deck would receive Chaos cards. Chaos cards famously require you to banish a light and a dark monster in your graveyard as a summoning requirement, which would work perfectly with Téa's previous deck full of light and dark spellcaster monsters. The Chaos cards would also perfectly represent the inner battle going inside of her, with Téa being the light and the evil spirit being the darkness. Her go-to Chaos summon would be the Chaos Valkyrie, and her ultimate boss monster would probably be the Chaos Sorcerer. Now, it might not have the strongest effect, but it has a powerful removal effect which compensates for it. I can also see the Chaos cards being added in by the Spirit of the Ring, and occasionally when he manages to take over Téa's body, he banishes the weaker cards from Téa's deck in order to summon those monsters. Thanks for watching, guys, and until next time.